Hello and welcome to everyone. It is right at 2 o'clock. It is May Day. Today is May Day, May 1st. We are going to have a wonderful hour-long conversation around remote learning support. I'd love to share that the ESUs across our state are working in collaboration with our Department of Education to help you, to help districts, to help educators think through what does education look like in this emergency remote learning context. It's becoming increasingly likely that remote learning will continue into the next academic year, either in pockets across our state or potentially even statewide. To help us address these needs, we have 3 different things going on from our ESUs to help you think about that remote learning planning. First off is these webinars, the structure of the webinars in a nutshell. The first 15 minutes is a little bit more presentational. The second 15 minutes, we interview a Nebraska educator and we illustrate a Nebraska educator's remote learning plan. And then we get into the second half. And in the second half today, you'll have the opportunity to explore screencasting in our main room here. Or if you desire, you can engage in some conversation, some small group conversation around remote learning. Maybe compare notes with other people from across the state. Finally, we'll wrap up all together as a whole group and we'll be done by 3, I promise. Also want to highlight that in May, on the 28th, is our middle school and high school day, where from 9 to noon, we're going to walk you through creating your own remote learning plan with the guidance that we have on our website here. This will be a great opportunity once again to work with others in similar situations to create a high quality learning plan. Finally, in June, there's the Future Ready Conference, and the focus of that conference is to help districts, all stakeholders, administrators, educators, special education staff, your tech coordinators, all of your district stakeholders in thinking through what might the fall look like. So without any further ado, let's jump into some of our remote learning resources. Our Department of Education has issued what they call the Continuity of Learning Plan. And in the guidance document, they identified 2 different options for districts as they're thinking through emergency remote learning. One of those options is educational opportunities. Another is enrichment opportunities. I'd like to scroll down just a little bit. So this is a great webinar for all of you. This one's a 30-minute long chunk where you dive deeper into what do we mean by educational opportunities in that middle school and high school. Our goal right now is just to kind of scratch the surface and then to illustrate what we're talking about with our interview with Deb Grulin in just a little bit. But educational opportunities. Let's pause for just a moment. Everybody take a deep breath. Everybody remember that you are a wonderful, my internet cut out. My internet cut out. Everybody remember, you're a great, great teacher. You are a great teacher. And so what we're gonna share right now, I hope it doesn't feel like we're blowing your mind. That's not the purpose. Our goal is to help us think through these remote learning experiences with eyes on those best practices in education that we know, we live, we love. So, I mean, at the beginning of an educational opportunity, we need to identify what's that essential learning objective? What are we talking about? What are we learning about? We want to communicate that to our students, maybe in the form of a quick self-assessment. We'll see what that might look like in just a little bit. We know we're talking about something new. It's a new skill. It's a new standard that we're focused on. So we need some instruction. That might be an online reading. It might be an offline reading. Maybe it's a video. Potentially, it's a teacher interaction, maybe using a synchronous platform like Zoom or Google Meet, potentially. But we need that instruction piece. We can't skip the instruction piece, right? We know that. With instruction, we want to have a quick check for understanding. And so that might look like conversation, maybe in a discussion board on your learning management system. It might look like a graphic organizer to help the kids organize their ideas around the new learning. After we have that input, that process, we know we need some practice. We need the ability to practice. Begin to apply that learning objective in some context, that guided practice. And finally, we know as educators, we do this in our classrooms. We engage kids in creating products that dive deeper and engage kids deeper, that idea of transfer my understanding of this essential learning objective to a new context. But let's look at what that might look like in remote learning. So we know these things. With educational opportunities, our Department of Education defines these as standards or skill-based experiences. Our guidance, our suggestion to you is that you're focused on one specific objective at a time. That for that objective, you identify it. What is that objective? What are we talking about? You complete the statement, I can, and from a student perspective, and that we turn this into a quick self-assessment. You identify maybe, and so this document right here is this spreadsheet. This is meant to help you plan and real succinct, not trying to get to a 5-page lesson plan here, but to identify what is the instruction, the process, the practice, and the product activity. Now maybe it says online tasks and offline tasks. Maybe in your context, you don't need to think about both the online and the offline. But maybe you do. Maybe you do have a population of kiddos that do not have access to the devices or the internet capable of doing it. So the point in including this in the spreadsheet is to help you think through, okay, so if a kid can't get on to my online activity, then what might they do in that offline realm? I'm very excited to roll out, and today, just today, we are rolling out some exemplary remote learning plans created by Nebraska Educators. And so that's this table, and you're able to filter by content area, by grade range. As we get more, we'll continue to add. But if so, when I look at one of these things, for example, let's look at, I don't know, a high school class. And you'll see that 27 of these are coming from a high school class. I'd like to look at a business example. This one came from a teacher from this past week. Her name is Ari Levine, and she presented in what this might look like in a business context. So please notice, every one of these examples has a direct link to the document. You can look directly at it. And so thinking about what is that learning that I'm going to introduce in economics, an overview of the goods, services, wants, needs, and scarcity. Here's that quick I can statement. I can explain how scarcity impacts. So you're beginning your journey. You're going to, here's the instruction. You're going to read these things and fill out that graphic organizer as a process activity. Another process activity, you're going to get some immediate feedback, right? You're going to practice that key vocabulary. Next up, we're going to practice. We're going to play the bean game. And finally, you're going to create something that shows that you're able to do whatever it is that we are asking folks to do. So wonderful. Now I'm going to share that screen one more time. So we're back on this remote learning support website. We just glanced through some of these exemplars created by Nebraska teachers. And when I scroll down, I didn't say this in the elementary group. Um, this is how you would get something similar. Look how beautiful that is. And so you decide what it is you want to communicate. You decide which of the templates you would like. You fill out the form and it will automatically send it to you in an editable Google form or Google slide. And so then it's yours. Here's some more support, potentially in a high school setting. You might be able to string multiple weeks together and engage kids over the span of multiple weeks and in an activity that looks more similar to maybe what you'd do in a chapter. But the next up, before we get to our engagement, I want to touch on enrichment opportunities as well. And for that, I'm going to stop my screen share and turn it over to Jason. Jason Everett at ESU 10. Please begin.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, I'll kind of pick up where Nick left off. Those two pieces that NDE had were the educational opportunities and the enrichment opportunities. And so I'm going to get into just a few of the enrichment opportunities. You'll find some great examples on the Digital Edge Pedagogy website. And so I encourage you to go back there and check those out. But what I'm going to focus on is synchronous enrichment opportunities. And the reason why I like to do that, a lot of us are focusing on asynchronous because we're not always able to get to the computer at the same time. And so having those options recorded, we'll talk about recording and things like that a little bit later on. But it's just really engaging to be in an opportunity where you can call somebody out. And so I'm seeing people online that I can say hi to, like, hi, Denise. Great to see you. And there's others online that I saw earlier that I can call out. Sue Hauser, I haven't seen you forever, and it looks like you're driving today. And so that's what makes synchronous connections really special, is because you can have a one-on-one conversation and it feels like you're talking to everybody in the room. Just like when you're doing a workshop or you're teaching to your students, you can look them in the eye and really talk to them, where it's a little bit harder to do in asynchronous situations. And so I have a few that I want to share with you. So let me share my screen real quick. All right. And so here is the website that just beyond the educational opportunities, these are the enrichment opportunities. And so again, I encourage you to check those out. But here are some that are happening right here in Nebraska. I've been working with the Omaha Performing Arts Center, helping them get online and really jump with both feet into this world. And so they're doing things like this Wednesday warm-ups with Aaron Darrell. He's a dance instructor. You can kind of see some of what they're doing in the middle screen there. They have a jazz academy and all sorts of different things like that. And so I encourage you guys to check those out and share those with your kiddos. This one is really great all year round. The folks at Moral Hall do a great job with their virtual field trips. And so if you've never been able to do one because of the cost or whatever it might be, all of their stuff is free right now. And they're encouraging people to check out Moral Hall and all of the resources that they have there. And the one that kind of got me into this was my wife was sharing this with her students. They're first graders, but they also have secondary curriculum as well. But the Durham Museum is posting something every day. And so I encourage you to check out what they're doing. A lot of neat things. They also have other repositories that are just awesome. There's so many people out there that are providing these virtual one-on-one interactive virtual field trips, and the CILC is probably the main place that's keeping track of that. And so we'll share all those websites with you so that you can go there, check them out. They even have adult ones. So when you guys are stuck at home and you just want to get away, you could see what's out there for you too. Besides that, some other things that I've run into that people are doing, just inviting people that your students interact with on a regular basis is also helpful. So we had some teachers invite their lunch crew in just to do an interview and see how they're doing and how things have changed from, serving trays to serving through windows and things like that. And um, so along those lines, people inside your building, but also people in your community that either might have something to do with what you're teaching, or maybe a career opportunity that those students could get into. Those are great ways to also enrich what you're doing for your students. Just a couple other things that I wanted to share. You can, whatever you can do face to face, I'll make the bold statement that you can do virtually as well. It might seem hard and it might take some creativity, but one example is we have a middle school music teacher here in Kearney who asked about doing, she has a ukulele club every week throughout the year. And so she's now doing her ukulele club virtually every week. And she just had one last night, but she's really mixing it up too. Not only is she doing this ukulele club and teaching them how to do that, but she's also bringing in guest speakers from all around the country. Last week she had a famous ukulele player from Canada, and he was on there for about a half hour playing music and showing the kids some different things. And so that was really neat. She's also going to be doing a Zoom talent show for kind of an end of the year thing for her students, activity for her students. And so as you think about some of these things, I just encourage you to think, how can we do it, as opposed to, man, we can't do that now that we're just stuck in Zoom or whatever that is. And then some really simple things that I think are probably more towards engagement than necessarily enrichment. But I love just little things like in Zoom, being able to change your background. And I notice some of you guys have already changed your background, but depending on what you have, you can create your own backgrounds. And it's really easy to do with PowerPoint or Google Slides or something like that to create those images and then just have them available as your Zoom background. Fun things like Hat Day. A few of my coworkers are on here, and they'll probably remember when I wore my big sombrero to one of our meetings. You could have all of your students wear their favorite hat, or have a meet my pet day or something like that. And so these are just some things to keep not only for enrichment, but keep the kids engaged as well.
Thank you. And I think that also goes back to that idea of some of the socio-emotional needs, right? And so we want to maintain those relationships with your kids. They need that, you need that, we need that, everybody needs that. So those are some wonderful ideas. Thank you very much for not only around those enrichment opportunities, but also maybe how can we continue to engage those kids on an emotional level. Excellent. Thank you very much. Now I would like to introduce our speaker of the day, and that is Deb Bulin. If you would please unmute yourself. Deb is a math teacher at Thayer Central in my neck of the woods. Share with us, Deb, what's one thing you've done to help with your mental health, self-care?
With my mental health? I walk every morning, we walk 6 miles every morning, Amy Weedle and I do. So that kind of helps us with our mental health, kind of debrief our day and debrief the day before and plan for the next day. So it's a good thing for me because I don't have any kids at home. And she has a lot of a time out for us.
Awesome. So excellent. Thank you, Deb, for being here. We'd like to organize our conversation now around this idea of educational opportunities and how can we create an emergency or a remote learning plan. So here is, and actually it's in this filterable spot too. If you search by math, I bet you'll find some of Deb's content. Here it is. So here's one where we're multiplying polynomials or binomials. Maybe I wrote it wrong. It is polynomials. So I'm
You're right, it's polynomials.
Share here. So Deb, talk us through it. So tell us about the objective. What's the objective here?
So the week before we did multiplying binomials. And so this week we focused on polynomials, and the FOIL method, if you're math people, obviously work for binomials, but not for the rest. So I'd had a video on my first lesson and it disappeared for some reason. So I had to go with plan B, but there's two different methods that basically I stressed to them, the box method or distributive property. So that's basically the objective, to be able to multiply polynomials using one of those methods.
Okay, and so then you turn that into that quick I can self-check, right? I can multiply polynomials over here. That's beautiful. Tell us about the videos. So this is the instruction piece. Did you make these or did you find them?
The first video is a video I did from the Zoom the week before. I had recorded as a Zoom lesson with the kids. So the first video is mine from the week before when we went over all three methods, the FOIL, the box, and the distributive property. So the first video is mine. And then the next two are videos that I found that were specific to the method that I wanted.
But I think that's a good point, because you don't necessarily have to create all of those videos, but use that high quality resources that you have access to maybe in your text, but also be able to beg, borrow, and steal from other places too. I'm sure that you watched the video right before you shared it out with your kids.
Oh yeah, yes, I did.
That's always a good idea. Tell us about Quizzes. What is Quizzes for the practice up here?
So Quizzes is similar to Kahoot, except that all of the questions are right on your device. You can assign it. You can do it live, or you can assign it as homework. Is what this one is. They did change it recently. It used to just be multiple choice, but now it is opened up, and you can do true false, you can do open-ended. So all of these companies I feel have worked really hard to make this remote learning work for everyone. And so and I've done so many of them, I can't remember what this, I think this one is an open-ended one actually, is what I have there.
Awesome. So now we're down the stretch. And so you're saying attend the Zoom session for Quizlet Live. What's that?
So we did, it's just more practice, but it was Quizlet Live. And so they've also upped their game, because Quizlet Live in the classroom, it randomly puts them into groups. And now you can do it individually. So you can do Quizlet Live individually. And so as a teacher, what you see is, if you've done a Quizlet Live in your classroom, you still see the kids moving across, and if they get it wrong, they go back. They're just working individually. I also had the Department of Ed Zoomed with me that day. Deborah Monick from the Department of Ed joined me that day, and I have two algebra classes back to back. So the first day she just kind of sat quietly. The first period, the second period, I told her to go ahead and put the code in so she could kind of see what the kids were doing. And so she was impressed with that. So it was just extra practice, not anything graded, just some extra practice on multiplying. And then I did share that out. I didn't record it because obviously all you see is snakes and lions and tigers or whatever animals they use across the screen. So I did not record it, but I did share the link with the rest of the class that did not participate in the Zoom, so they could have more practice. And then like this week, they had a quiz on it then.
But that's a wonderful example of an interactive activity to engage kiddos with in those synchronous settings. Jason was just talking about making sure we are connecting with the kids, and potentially in a Zoom setting, an activity that you could try in your classroom would be something like a Quizlet Live or maybe a GIM kit. Outstanding. Tell us about Finish the Race. What was the product? What were kids creating or doing to show you that they could multiply polynomials?
This was a worksheet that I would have done in class had I been in class. So I put it into Google Slides and I used it as a background, and then I put text boxes in. It was a puzzle, so it's kind of self-checking. I think it was like, where do cows eat lunch? And then the answer was in the cafeteria. Haha, funny joke, right? So so they could type it had to match. There was a problem, and then the answers, they had to match them, and so they just could type the numbers in the side, and then the puzzle part was at the bottom where they could type in the letters that answered the question. So it's fairly self-checking, because if you get something that doesn't make sense, you're not doing it correctly. Mm-hmm. So fairly just extra practice and pretty self-checking.
Mm-hmm. So tell me, about how long do you expect it to take kids to get through these activities?
The first one, the try it out, that was pretty quick. It was just to practice binomials. The videos were very short. The quizzes, I think, had 6 questions in it, maybe. Mm-hmm. And then the worksheet had, I don't know how many, but since it was matching, you could kind of eliminate, your choices as you went down. So it wasn't like there were 2 pages to the worksheet, but it shouldn't have taken very long. So I would say no more than, probably for upper level kids, probably 30 minutes, for others, maybe an hour. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But that was the whole week. So that was not just one day. That was something for the entire week.
Good. And so coming back to some recommendations from the Department of Education around time on task, they're suggesting that in a high school experience, each class probably has about an hour and a half of time for the week. And so potentially we give them one of these remote learning plans. Maybe you get through 2. But we're probably not expecting that you're going to get through 7 of them, right?
No.
So excellent. Let's just glance at one more with Deb here. So here we see the description. So students will find the volume of prisms and cylinders. Once again, real quick, so we're focused on one objective: finding the volume of prisms and cylinders. Here's your quick self-check, and now we have our instruction. Tell us about the instruction.
This is a video I found that it actually has cones and spheres in it, and I didn't know how to shorten the video. So it was from Math Antics, mm-hmm. and so I wasn't sure how to shorten it. So I told them that they could stop at about 9 minutes, but it did a good job of going through how to find volume of prisms and cylinders. So that's kind of what I wanted out of it.
Great. And then we have a quick check your understanding, that process activity. So we're using IXL. What is IXL?
So IXL is just a learning, one of the, like an online learning where you can, if you miss them, you go down, your score goes down. If you get them right, your score goes up. Obviously you could get to 100. Since I just wanted to kind of check, I just had them do 6 questions instead of like going all the way to 100. So it's self-checking, because they'll know if they got it right or wrong. And that was kind of the goal, of just to see if they knew what they were doing. If they did those 6 questions, they could just check to see if they were doing them correctly or not.
I think that's a great point, Deb, right? Our check for understanding, it's not meant to be a got you in any way, right? We're trying to help the kids understand, am I on the right path? And so using some of those independent learning platforms like an IXL or a Khan Academy or Quiz even in your last example, where students get that immediate feedback is outstanding. we're on to the main dish. And so now we're going to practice. Tell us about the practice activity here.
This is something I started doing in my classroom. So it's homework sums. There's 4 questions. And in the middle of the sheet is what the answer should add up to. So again, it's fairly self-checking. So there's 4 problems on 2 are on cylinders and 2 are on prisms of finding the volume. And then in the middle is what their answer should add up to.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's fairly self-checking if they are getting the right answers or not, if it adds up or it doesn't. This is actually what I did this week. And so I did Zoom yesterday. And so with one of I only had 1 student show up, but that's better than none, I guess.
That's
and
true.
So we actually went over the homework some. So I recorded it. And, you know, with the Zoom, I was able to write on the sheet. And so I did record it and I sent it out to students. So I think that helped them pretty much.
Excellent. And now we're on to the dessert. So this is that show what you know, the product. And we're using Flipgrid to do this. Tell us about this activity.
Right. So they are supposed to find a prism and a cylinder. And with surface area, we did this. I didn't do it on Flipgrid. I just had them take a picture of a prism and a cylinder and find the surface area. They could either write it out or however they wanted to do it. So this time I'm using Flipgrid. So they could use the same object or something different. But so they're supposed to find a prism and a cylinder in their house and then tell or show, because they could write it out, show how they could find the volume of those 2 items on Flipgrid. So I've not looked at those yet because this is like it's due today basically, or over the weekend. But so I've not looked at those yet, but that's something I'm trying. I did Flipgrid with an algebra class and it worked out pretty well.
Okay, excellent. I think Flipgrid is an awesome tool to engage those students in that worked example. When we talk about math research and best practices, that math discourse, right? That they're able to explain the process to how to find that product, the end piece there. So beautiful, Deb. And so tell us more broadly, when you're thinking about remote learning plan, what's your thought process? Where do you start?
I think to keep it simple, I just keep it to 1 task, not a multitude of things. And I try to review what we did the week before with some short little task, and then go into, and I try to do a lot of different things so that they're not bored with just the same old stuff. So throughout this time, I've learned to use, like, I've done Nearpod. So I found the matching activities with Nearpod work pretty well with math. And so I think I did that in algebra this week with slope. So they had 2 points and then the slope. And so I found the matching works pretty well. So I've done a lot. I've done Nearpod. I've done the quizzes, I've done Kahoots, I've done Flipgrids, so I've tried to incorporate a variety of things so they're not just bored with the same old stuff. So,
So
I don't know.
So narrowing your focus, right? That's what I heard you say. I also heard you say including a multitude of different types of activities to keep the engagement high, right? Keep it fresh.
I use a lot of Google Forms as well.
Okay.
I've done my quizzes on Google Forms or in Google Slides, and then to me it's just easy. Even if in math it's hard to type the answer incorrectly, so even if it doesn't match what I have, I can still go back and give them the points for it, and it's in one place and it's pretty easy to do. And so I've used a lot of Google Forms in the last. I don't usually use them, but I've used a lot of them. Obviously, I'm not getting covered what I would normally get covered at this time of year, but I think when you focus just on one thing, then you're not overwhelming the kids. Although I still have some that aren't doing anything, but that's I've quite a few are doing this stuff. I don't have a lot of participation in the Zooms, but I think I'm giving them notes, I'm giving them the videos, and the Zooms are basically to ask questions or to do extra practice. And so I suppose if they're getting it, there would be no reason that they would have to join the Zoom if they're understanding what they're doing. So I do have a couple students that I have to print stuff out for. And so like the Google Forms you can print out, some of the quizzes you can print out. So a lot of this stuff you can print out and I can get it to them that way.
Thank you for reminding us of that, right? And so, excellent. So, Deb, thank you so much. That was a wonderful illustration of an educational opportunity. And you hit on every one of these different components. And you talked also to that need potentially for the offline as well as the online. Wonderful. Once again, everybody, you can find more exemplary remote learning plans here. Right now, we're going to break up. And so I would like you please to answer this poll. And I want to relaunch the poll and continue. So give me an A if you would like to stay in this room and explore screencasting, right? Where you'll explore some different tools for how you might create a video like Deb was talking about. A B, if you would like to engage in some more discussion around what Deb has shared, just in some smaller groups. So A, if you want to see screencasting, and B, if you want to do some discussion. You have only another 15 seconds to fill that out. Come on, you're looking good. All right. Thank you. And so now I'm going to create the breakout rooms, and you are open. Okay, we're ready. All right, Andrew, I'll hand it over to you. Before I go, I'm putting the link for those of you who are going into the discussion rooms. The link is in the chat here. There are 3 guiding questions, and that's what we're looking for inside of those discussion boards. I'll be in and out. With that, Andrew, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Nick. And I'm going to X out of this thing that just came up on my screen. I'm going to be leading this portion with Jason Everett out of ESU 10, and we're going to go through screencasting and give you some suggestions on some different ways to do that and some tips and tricks for maybe how to go about subtle edits to those videos and a number of different things. And so to kind of dive right into that, honestly, let me bring up on the old share here really where we're focusing our time, and that is going to, in large part, be on that instruction piece. And so how do we...
Oh, we made it. This is weird.
Hello, everybody. I just wanted, I'm going to jump in and out of multiple spots. And so please feel free to have whatever conversation you'd like to have, but I would ask you to get at least one response to one of those questions in the chat. So who would like to be, and we only need one of you to type, have a group conversation. Who's going to volunteer to be the recorder? All right, Judy, it looks like it's you. No? Did Judy say no? It's up to you. Stacy, are you the recorder?
I can be the recorder. I'm just having a hard time. I'm on my phone right now, so I'm having a hard time figuring out where the chat went. So when I switched into the discussion room, I didn't see the chat, so I'm trying to find it.
I recommend it's not somebody on a phone. Dan, it looks like you are right in front of a computer. Are you our recorder for now?
Sorry, my son was using the computer to do a test. He's trying to get finals done for his college classes, so that trumped my meeting.
No worries. Dan, are you good to write down?
I can give it a try.
All right, so you click on that chat, and then it'll open up the Padlet wall. So I will share my screen real fast. Here are the questions, right? It's well, what was one takeaway that you had from our presentation? What's one thing you'd like to learn more about? And maybe what's one success you've had at fostering those relationships? Maybe it's the Zoom connections, maybe it's something else. But have a conversation, and Dan, he's going to help get some of our ideas onto that Padlet wall. I'll be back.
Thank you.
Yep.
Tool that really anybody with a Google account.
It's been tough, honestly.
Hi, Nick. I couldn't stand the silence, so I had to ask some questions.
That's just fine. You do have access, Crystal, to our Padlet wall. Is that true? Yep. And so it's been tough, huh, Lori?
Student engagement's been the biggest challenge. You know, we have some students that have been really good with, you know, participating, and then we have some, student engagement is our issue.
Mm-hmm.
We're hoping to be able to, hopefully in the fall, things go back to a somewhat normal, and we want to use more online more blended teaching.
Yeah.
So the kids, if something happens, we have to go back to this, they're ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where we are now.
I'm going to jump out of this room. Please continue to have a great conversation and get me at least one response. Crystal, if you would please help get a response on that Padlet wall.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll be back.
That we're bringing up here, it literally in 5 to 10 minutes time, you could acclimate to being able to do something like this.
You think you know what you want it to do, but when you have the kid, or I actually had adults doing it, it didn't quite go the way I expected it to.
Yeah, I've got my little puzzles all made up, but getting it into the form I'm struggling a little bit with that.
Peg, you got it all figured out over here? You're gonna get you know where the Padlet wall is?
We can put it in the chat. We were just chatting because we were all just being quiet, so we just kind of started.
Yep, and this is really meant to be what it is you need, right? Have that conversation that you need. If you would, Peg, get maybe one idea onto that Padlet wall for us.
Okay. Gotta find it.
No, I didn't mean to do that. I just closed it all. Gosh darn it. I can't like undo that in Zoom.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's gonna pull everybody back, and then I'm gonna have to open it up again. 41 seconds. Oh man. All right. Well, that's what's gonna happen.
And even posing a question in the first few seconds of the video that you hold off on the answer to until later, or you promise that they're going to learn something really interesting here in a little bit, is a great teaser to sort of capture their imagination. That causes them to want to continue to watch on, to put the pieces together with the answer that you're sort of holding back. So around 3 minutes, attention spans plummet to about 5 minutes. At 5 minutes in, you will have lost the majority of your audience, even with some of the best of content. And so if we think about that, if there is a topic that does need 15, 20 minutes of time for you to delve into in its parts, if you're creating video content, consider just chunking that down into 5 minute or less micro learning opportunities. And so that way then your learners can go in and you would think, well, if I'm going to watch those 4 in a row back to back to back, how is that any different than a 20-minute video? But it is. It gives your viewer a chance to just kind of take a breather, collect themselves, and move on. So additional.
I'm going to pause here for 1 second. I made a mistake. I pressed the wrong button. If you want to get back into that breakout room, please do, and you'll be able to get back into it. Sorry about that. And Andrew, back to you.
That was perfect. We're just kind of between segments, so that's fine. QuickTime is something that I use on a daily basis, and it is for Mac computers or for an iPad. And it's very simple. You open up QuickTime, you hit File, and then these 3 options come up, and you can do a screen recording, you can do a movie, you can do an audio file, and so I even do some of my podcasting recordings through there.
I can't even. I'm at
my desktop, and so I got it all.
Okay. I'm using my phone.
You're at the beach.
I'm using my phone.
I wish it was at the beach.
I was supposed to be leaving for Vegas tonight, so don't even go there.
You were gonna go to the desert, though.
Well, you know what? I wanted to go there. Not quite the beach, but it's Vegas.
So tell me one thing that you liked from our presentation today.
Honestly, there wasn't anything that anybody said that was completely new to me. I'd heard of some of the things, but I just like the idea that everybody's we're just trying to get through this, and it feels like almost a support group in a way. But I do like the idea that, you know, we got a chance just to share ideas and find out what other people are doing. That may be something that we hadn't thought of, because it's really hard to reach students in this situation. Even our best and brightest and most engaged students, this is tough on them, you know, and we don't know their situations at home. And it's really, I just like to, I feel like I'm not so alone right now. Other people are experiencing some of the same positive and negatives.
Nice hearing that somebody else is only having very low turnout for Zooms.
Yeah.
One thing I would like to hear something about is how we're going to mandate our kids showing up.
I think that'll be a good conversation as we move into the fall. And in the conversations that I'm hearing coming out of the department, it appears clear that our department is preparing for the potential that we have to continue doing this next year. I think you might have seen in the news that Omaha Public Schools purchased 54,000 devices for kids to send home. Ralston Public Schools just went 1-to-1.
Wow.
But this is something we should have done back in 2000.
I agree.
Going paperless was something that was supposed to happen way before this.
I agree. I think our biggest concern isn't the devices, it's the Wi-Fi, the internet access. And we're lucky that we're in a small enough community that they can probably do something fairly easy. I mean, as easy as something like that can be as far as getting community access to Wi-Fi. Until that happens, we can't really be equitable.
Right.
You know.
And it's hard to do the online and the offline options.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
She froze. How about you, Carissa? Tell us about it. Where are you? What do you teach?
I'm in Superior, Nebraska, and I teach secondary social studies.
I'm sorry.
But I think I liked how you guys talked about different steps the whole week to complete, because the way I did things this time, it's kind of very choppy, and I wish there was more of a flow to it.
When you think about a flow in the social studies classroom, potentially you're building as part of maybe a bigger unit. So for example, in a classroom focused on, I don't know, ancient societies, right? And so the students get to pick an ancient society. Maybe it's the Greeks, maybe it's the Romans, maybe it's the Egyptians, maybe it's the Chinese, I don't know. But then week by week, you have focused conversation or around those different objectives. So maybe first one is different forms of government. That's your instruction, right? Your essential learning goal is we're gonna learn about those different possible forms of government. And so we have that instruction. Maybe it's a reading, maybe it's a video, but it's not an hour experience, it's a 10-minute experience. And then with the practice, right, I'm going to practice the key vocabulary. I'm going to solidify my understanding of the terms using a Quizlet or a Quizzes or a GimKit or some of these other tools. And finally, that product is that I'm applying my understanding of those different types of governmental systems to the spot that I have picked, right? And so to the Greeks. And so that is that one slide. And so the first week is the governmental systems, next is the economic systems, next is the geographical locations, next is I don't know what. But that over the span of time, you're creating then week by week a new slide that in a presentation that probably feels similar to some things that you've done in your classroom already. Do you like that idea of having it more connected?
Yeah, the more connected makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. How about James? What do you teach, James?
I'm a special ed teacher. I have a self-contained room, and I work with kindergartners up to 12th grade. I have one that's actually beyond 12th grade.
Okay.
So I do a little bit of everything and anything.
So how has, I mean, remote learning makes it pretty darn hard for you to do your job.
In some aspects, yes, because a lot of my kids aren't truly independent. But the big thing I'm running into is, since their parents are working, they're not able to show up to class, and my higher functioning students are choosing not to.
Yeah.
So it'll be fine once we have, more, the students are more used to it. Some of the life skills activities are going to be very interesting, and that's something I'm working on with my new co-teacher next year, how we're going to do like simple hand over hand task, and looking at also having to train the parent to be with the kid when we do the lesson, to be basically their para while we do that activity.
Right.
And looking at how much time we actually spend on something, because it's hard for a parent to work with a kid and not keep that parent role.
Right.
They'll step back and say, okay, they're leading, I have to do what they say, not to jump in, not to answer for them. And looking at that aspect of it.
And I
It's
think
fun. For me, it's fun.
part of what we heard from Deb was to have bite-sized experiences. And I think that would be especially important in your context, that we're not trying to give people too much more than they can chew on.
And that's really difficult when I'm working on small bites anyway.
Yeah.
But I got to re-bite those so the parent's able to follow along and not interfere with the learning.
Yes.
It's going to be fun.
It's a challenge, most definitely. Jason or Stacy, how about you? What was one thing you enjoyed from the first half?
I picked up 3. I actually came in at the end of the elementary one too. I've got some websites. Is that Spotify? Let me see. I have to pull it up. I have it written down here. Because I use Google Classroom, and I use Kanabi. I use about 4 or 5 actually. Flipgrid and Screencastify, Quizlet. Those were some I picked up from they were talking the stuff they use, so that was pretty helpful. Because I used Google Classroom a lot at the beginning of the year before this kind of all happened, so I kind of got lucky in that aspect. And I teach science junior high.
Thank you.
What's your new title next year, Jason?
What's that?
Are you going to a different room or a different?
I'm Achievement Center next year.
Oh, fun.
Is that a step up?
Just different. I was 7-8 junior high science, and then I did reading, and now it's going to be it's like a PBIS room and a regroup room, kind of where you go to take a test if you missed a day during class.
Thank you for sharing.
Step sideways.
Stacy, I'd love to hear your voice. What was one thing that you learned, or one thing that you would like to learn more about?
Well, you heard me earlier. I was talking about just the idea of kind of connecting and networking with teachers. As far as I'm kind of overwhelmed. I don't know how much I don't know right now. When people start throwing a bunch of websites and apps and things, I get a little bit, overwhelmed, and I have to just kind of say, okay, I need to focus on one thing. I really want to learn to be good at something before I start trying to be mediocre at a bunch of things. So I really want to learn the Screencastify thing. I think that will be very useful in remote learning and as well as traditional classroom learning. I think you can do a lot with it there too. But from what I've heard, I just started my account, and I've got the app on my Chrome now, and I haven't played around with it a lot yet, but I want to I'm the kind of person I have to just mess around with something to learn it. I'm not real big on instructions. I'm like a learn but while I do kind of thing, and I don't think I can mess anything up too much.
It's true. I would really suggest whatever tool you're trying to use. I promise you on YouTube, there's going to be a step-by-step walk you through how to do it. And so whatever it is you're trying to do, that might be Quizlet, that might be whatever the other tools may be, check it out on YouTube if you have questions. That or just continue to click the buttons until it works.
Yeah, that's kind of my style right there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm sure, what ESU do you live in? What ESU area?
My ESU, I'm one.
One? So Chris Good, obviously, Chris Good would be a wonderful individual to reach out to. She'd be able to help you with whatever the ed tech question may be.
Oh, absolutely. I've worked with her on things before, so yes. I am very well aware we're lucky to have her there.
She's awesome. She really is. All right, I'm gonna pop back into the main room, but you guys can stay here. I'd love to have you chat about whatever you want to chat about, or a question might be, what would you like to learn more about? I don't know. You guys take it away. See you in a bit.
Things to do.
That's so true, and it's tough. It's tough for students in this at-home setting to stay engaged sometimes because relationships are the foundation of learning, right? And when everything is static and doesn't feel like there's that person on the other side, it can make it even more challenging. And so this is fun, I think, just professionally too, as a skill, right? Like it's fun to create. It's fun to learn how to do something that you didn't previously have the capacity to do. And so even starting with a screencast is a phenomenal first, yes, it's a great tool in and of itself, but it could be the first step in a journey into something that just becomes a hobby for you. That's honestly, I've kind of walked probably pretty far down that road, and it did start with the screencast. And so would love, to see more educators pursue that, and would love to support anyone along the way as well. So I'm guessing Nicholas will be popping back in here at some point in time. I'll throw it to the room. Do we have any questions, I guess, in the minute or so here? And
as people are situating it, it makes me think of if you guys have any good podcasts that you listen to, if you have any good YouTube channels that you've seen other people do, it's good just to go out and watch what the kids are watching. While we may not, have the same appreciation, if you can do some of those same things that the YouTubers are doing, it helps keep them engaged too.
Awesome. I want to end right on time. I want to value everybody's time. We'd like to start right on time and end right on time. Thank you so much for being here today. Today is, we're talking about remote learning support. ESUs across the state, I can't emphasize this enough. ESUs across the state are working in collaboration. We are collaborating with our Department of Education to provide you with some opportunities for thinking through remote learning as we look potentially into the next academic year. We'll have another webinar on Friday. Join us in May, join us in June. Thank you so much for joining us today. On behalf of everybody at an ESU level, we appreciate you. We appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. That concludes our recorded part.